is the apocalypse now. The difficult Duchess's worst nightmare has come true. Her response to her father's life or death drama.
Harry called Archie his African.
The first tremor didn't come from a courtroom or a palace balcony. It came from a whisper inside Westminster. Not shouted, not announced, just quietly logged. According to parliamentary insiders, a sealed procedural motion was filed late on a Thursday evening after most staff had gone home after the corridors had emptied and the cameras had powered down. It wasn't labeled explosive. It wasn't labeled urgent. It was labeled administrative clarification. And yet everyone who read the internal summary understood exactly what it meant. Think so. Williams, very matter-of-fact. But let's A, verification inquiry had been triggered. Not public, not adversarial, but official. And the name at the center of it wasn't Meghan Markle. It was Archie. The inquiry, sources say, was activated within hours of Tom Bower's now infamous remark at a London literary event when the veteran journalist leaned back in his chair, fixed the audience with that familiar fox-like stare, and said something that instantly changed the temperature of the room. The public, he said calmly, has never been told the truth about Archie's birth, like becoming a new mom and tell us a little bit about baby Sussex, as we're calling it. He didn't shout it. He didn't dramatize it. He let the sentence sit there heavy and unresolved like an accusation that didn't yet know its own shape. By the time he added, and I'm prepared to defend that statement, the damage was already done. Within hours, British media lit up. By morning, American networks had picked it up. By midday, social media had turned it into a feeding frenzy of speculation, disbelief, outrage, and denial. But behind the noise, something else was happening. Something quieter and far more dangerous. Because in the United Kingdom, certain claims don't require proof to cause action. They require concern. And concern is exactly what reached Kensington Palace the following afternoon. Delivered not by courier, not by aide, but by a plain, unmarked package left at a private entrance. No return address, no seal, only a handwritten note scrolled across the front in uneven ink. For the future of the monarchy, open personally. Prince William did exactly that. And this is where the story stops being gossip and starts feeling like a slow-motion earthquake. Because when something moves inside Westminster quietly, without cameras, without speeches, without leaks, it means the decision has already been made. This wasn't noise. This wasn't theater. This was procedure. Cold, methodical, ruthless in its silence. By the time Tom Bower's words finished echoing in that room, the damage was already irreversible. Not because he yelled, not because he accused, but because he didn't blink, because he said it calmly, because he said he'd defend it. And in Britain, when a man like that says something like that, institutions listen even if the public laughs. And that package, that wasn't curiosity, that was containment. Because once questions reach Kensington Palace, they don't bounce, they embed.
Archie, who was born on May 6th,
according to sources close to the palace, was a thick dossier. No logos, no official letterhead, just pages and pages of meticulously organized material. Timelines, photographs, anomalies, witness accounts presented not as declarations, but as questions. The first page carried a title that made William's stomach drop. Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor, a timeline review. Imagine opening a folder and realizing it's not accusing anyone, it's asking you to explain yourself. That's worse. That's not a tabloid hit piece. That's a forensic examination. Dates slightly off. Statements adjusted after release. Hospital references that didn't match the standard protocols everyone else followed. Language that danced instead of landed. Nothing screamed fraud. Everything whispered misalignment. And in royal life, misalignment is lethal. Then the photographs. Not labeled fake. Not dismissed. Just marked as irregular. The kind of thing staff whisper about but never say out loud because saying it out loud would mean admitting someone else noticed too. And then came the detail that reportedly froze William where he stood. A witness account. Anonymous. Precise. Disturbingly precise. A physical mark on Archie's body. Something not public, something not photographed, something only family had ever seen. William remembered it, and when a stranger knows something only family should know, the question stops being, is this rumor real? And becomes, who has been lying? That was the moment the order went out. Quietly, no press, no panic, verified, cross-check, confirm, no assumptions. But questions don't stay obedient, they spread. Across the Atlantic, the mood was not calm. It was panic dressed as outrage. Headlines slammed into Meghan like a barrage. Tom Bower challenges Archie birth narrative. Parliament sources confirm internal review. And suddenly, the phone never stopped buzzing. Lawyers, advisors, strategists, all saying calm while their voices shook. She wanted a legal strike. Fast, hard, intimidating. And Tom Bower's response, proceed as you wish. Discovery benefits truth. That's when fear replaced fury. Because Discovery doesn't care about image. It doesn't care about narrative. It digs. And then there was Harry. Silent. No denial, no defense, no reassuring leak to friendly outlets. 48 hours of nothing. And silence, in this case, screamed louder than any accusation. What kind of father says nothing? That question haunted headlines, haunted comment sections, haunted insiders. Meanwhile, the real story wasn't in the press. It was in Parliament. Because this wasn't about drama. It was about lineage, documentation, constitutional precedent. Once those questions are logged, they don't get erased. They get followed. Back in California, the pressure cracked something. A rumor surfaced, and unlike the others, this one didn't feel stupid. During a tense exchange through intermediaries, something slipped. Just a phrase. The woman who gave birth. Not a confession, not a denial, just a fracture in the narrative. And fractures spread, because this was no longer about gossip. It was about records, about verification, about what happens when a carefully managed story collides with institutions that outlive reputations. And once that question exists, outrage can't erase it. This wasn't just about a child anymore. It was about whether delayed truth could still be contained, and whether a monarchy built on legitimacy could survive unanswered questions. The jet touched down under a bruised sky. Harry stepped onto British soil like a man walking toward judgment. No cameras, no cheers, just history pressing down on his shoulders. He hadn't told Meghan. He hadn't told anyone. For the first time in years, he chose alone. Windsor loomed. Inside a room stripped of ceremony, William waited. No aid, no smiles, just exhaustion carved into his face. The silence stretched. Did she give birth to Archie? William asked. Flat. Unemotional. Harry froze. I don't know, he finally said. Not for certain. That was enough. The folder slid across the table. Timelines, statements, travel records, and one document that drained the blood from Harry's face. A legal opinion. Preliminary. Chilling. If the birth was misrepresented, the line of succession could be challenged. Parliament could act. This is bigger than Meghan, William said. Bigger than you. Harry broke. She said it was the only way. William leaned back, pain flickering. Did you believe her? Harry didn't answer. Harry didn't answer because answering would mean admitting how far the ground had shifted beneath his feet. The room felt smaller now, heavier, like the walls themselves were listening. William didn't push. He didn't need to. The truth had already landed where it hurt most. Birth certificate. It shows Archie Harrison Mountbatten. The words hung there, clinical and devastating. A document meant to settle everything had somehow become another question mark. Not proof, not reassurance. Just another layer in a story that no longer knew where it began. Harry stared at the paper like it might explain itself if he waited long enough. It didn't. What it did instead was force him to confront something he'd been avoiding for years. That love doesn't cancel responsibility and belief doesn't replace certainty. William watched him quietly, not as an accuser, but as a brother who already knew the cost of silence. Across the ocean, Meghan was unraveling. Not the polished interviews, not the rehearsed indignation, but the raw private panic that comes when control slips through your fingers. Her phone lit up endlessly. Senior royals refusing comment. Legal analysts openly discussing succession implications. Parliament sources whispering instead of denying. And Harry still silent. That silence felt like betrayal. When her lawyer finally reached her, his voice had changed. No confidence, no bravado, just reality. Westminster wasn't backing down. Discovery would be brutal. Medical records, witnesses, timelines. Everything dragged into daylight. She laughed. Sharp, brittle. The kind of laugh that tries to scare fear away. They won't dare, she said. I'll burn it all down first. But even as she spoke, she felt it. The shift. This wasn't tabloids anymore. This wasn't Twitter storms. These were institutions that had survived abdications, wars, scandals far worse than hers. Institutions that didn't flinch. Back in London, Tom Bower watched with clinical calm. He hadn't released his final evidence. He didn't need to. The pressure was already doing the work. When asked if he feared retaliation, he smiled thinly. Truth has a way of surfacing, he said, especially when too many people are invested in keeping it buried. Behind closed doors, Parliament moved. Quietly, efficiently. A small cross-party committee formed under the harmless banner of constitutional clarification. No press releases, no grandstanding, but everyone who mattered understood the message. The monarchy monarchy was being audited from the inside. At Windsor, William stood by a window as Harry prepared to leave. The grounds looked unchanged, timeless, indifferent to human chaos. "You still have a choice," William said. "Tell the truth now, privately, or let it explode publicly. Either way, it's coming." Harry nodded, tears finally breaking free. "I never meant for it to go this far. It always does," William replied. When Harry returned to California days later, Meghan saw it instantly. The distance, the resolve, the weight he carried back with him. That night, after the children were asleep, he spoke words she hadn't expected to hear. "I'm done lying." Her face hardened. "You're choosing them over us. I'm choosing the truth," he said. For Archie, for Lilibet, for myself. The scream that followed wasn't polished or strategic. It was raw, furious, the sound of a perfect image cracking under pressure. And once it cracked, it couldn't be glued back together. Weeks later, Buckingham Palace released a statement so carefully worded it almost felt bloodless. No accusations, no names, just an acknowledgement that certain inconsistencies surrounding the circumstances of Archie's birth were under review. The world read between the lines. Markets reacted. Headlines exploded. Supporters argued. Critics felt vindicated. And somewhere in the middle stood a child who had become the center of a storm he never asked for. The monarchy didn't collapse, but it shifted. Reforms whispered about for decades were suddenly unavoidable. Trust was shaken, then slowly, painfully rebuilt, brick by brick. Meghan retreated from the spotlight, not with a dramatic exit, but a quiet withdrawal behind lawyers and NDAs. Hollywood momentum stalled. Invitations dried up. The comeback never quite arrived. Harry stayed in California, quieter now, focused less on fighting ghosts and more on being present. And Tom Bower published one final chapter, not with triumph, with a warning. Power built on illusion always collapses, and the truth, no matter how delayed, always demands its price. The curtain fell, but the echoes remained, proof that even the most carefully constructed fairy tales cannot survive forever when reality finally knocks. Reality finally knocks. Reality finally knocks. Reality.